High school seniors are making their final decisions about where to go to college. Of course, college can be quite the expense, and it's one that many are going to be paying off for years after graduation. So to talk about financial aid and how the process works, Dominic Yoia, Associate VP and Director of Financial Aid at Quinnipiac University, is joining me. Thanks so much.
Good morning.
All right, the entire process, when we're talking about financial aid, it can be very daunting and overwhelming, not just for parents, but for students as well. Let's try and make it as simple as possible for our viewers who are watching, and how the entire process works.
Sure. Well, the first thing a student needs to do is fill out what's called a FAFSA form, which is a free application for federal student aid. That's the form all colleges use to determine eligibility for federal, state, and most often institutional aid. Other forms might be required, but that's the form where they need to begin.
Now, there are deadlines that parents and students should be aware of when it comes to the FAFSA, right?
Yeah. The FAFSA, actually, this year you can fill it out much earlier than you could previously. You used to have a January 1st date where you can begin filling out the form. This year, October 2016 was when you can begin filling out the form. And every college will have a deadline. So it's important for students and parents to know when those deadlines are so they don't miss out on financial aid opportunities.
And what type of discussions should parents be having with their students, their children, when we're talking about an expense like college?
That's the hardest discussion.
As I mentioned, people are going to be paying for it for years after the graduation.
Yeah.
I'm still paying for mine, to be honest.
Sure. Well, really two things families should be looking at as they visit colleges. One is obviously academic fit. So as they're visiting schools, they should be looking for where they want to be taking their education for the next 4 years. The second and probably harder conversation to have is about financial fit. Colleges do cost, let's not make light of the expense of a college education, but it's really the most important 4 years in a student's life. So it's important to not only pick the right college for an academic fit, but it's also important to pick the right college for the best financial fit for the family.
Dominic, what is the average right now for debt when a typical student were to graduate after 4 years?
Yeah, the national
college?
average of student debt, about 2/3 of all students do graduate college with some form of debt, and about $30,000 is the national average. In Connecticut and the New England region, it's a little bit more. In Connecticut, it's about 35,000 students graduating with debt. Usually will attain about 35,000 worth of debt. So those are rough numbers where students may end up, if they do borrow, to go to college.
Now break out some of the different types of loans for our viewers, because there are federal loans, there are private loans, there are a lot of different options out there if you don't get a certain award from a school. Right? Because you can still go out there and get other scholarships. Oh,
absolutely. There's a lot out there for students to apply for. Really, the types of loans they're going to apply for are federal loans. Every student's going to get an award letter from a college that's going to list. Usually freshmen get $5,500 in loans, sophomores $6,500, juniors and seniors $7,500 in federal loans. Parents can also borrow parent loans through the federal government, and there are private student loans offered through banks for students to be able to borrow in addition to those other types of loans.
Now, I know in the past people have made sort of secondary pleas for additional financial aid. Is that something that still people should consider?
Absolutely. It's an appeals process. So oftentimes families will get an award letter from a college, and they'll look at that award letter and say, that's terrific, but is there any more aid that we can get to help afford a college education? The best advice I would have is you want to connect with the school's financial aid and admissions office to discuss what the process is. Sometimes on a second look, students might get a little bit more aid. On a second request, they might get a little bit more aid. So it never hurts to ask. It's a big financial decision a family needs to make, and it's important that they explore all their options.
And that face-to-face interaction really is worth it in a lot of cases, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just foregoing the email and the phone call and actually just coming and saying, hi, this is who I am and this is our situation.
Yeah,
right?
it's advisable, but it's difficult for aid administrators. This is our busiest time of year, so it's not unusual for us to have 10,000 applications processed for financial aid. So if we were to try to visit face-to-face with every family, it'd be next to impossible. For those families who are really concerned, really have questions, the financial aid office is the best place to visit and sit down with an aid administrator to discuss what the options are.
All right, Dominic, thanks so much. I appreciate your help.